The health of our military service members and our veterans is always a top-line issue. Many suffer from illness and injury as a result of their service, and most are believed to be at higher risk for chronic sickness, some of which is fortunately preventable. Cancer is a top concern for much of our military community. To dig into the increased risk cancer poses to our veterans, I sat down with Team Maureen, an organization focused on bringing attention and prevention of HPV and HPV-related cancers to our veterans. Daniel Linskey, Kelly Welch, and Emily Penick lead Team Maureen and founded the organization after the loss of their family and friend, Maureen Russo. Worldwide, a woman dies of cervical cancer every 2 minutes. It's the second most frequent cancer in the world. The military community is twice as likely to develop HPV, yet immunization rates among our service members are 50% of the civilian community. 90% of HPV-related cancers are preventable through immunization. We broke down the facts of HPV, why it's rising exponentially in our military, how it's affecting both our women and men service members, and what every single person, military and civilian, can do to stop one of the deadliest and preventable cancers in society today. Check out our conversation with Cardinals in the Air overlooking Plymouth Harbor. Follow us on social media, read the full episode on our website, then head over to our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform to catch this conversation, and our follow-up with Danny as he shares what it was like to lead the Boston Police Department during the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing. Well, the Cardinals showed up and the butterflies are out, I'm sure, because it's a beautiful day on this kickoff to Memorial Day weekend, and we're right here on the South Shore, or should I say the South Shore of Boston. It's awesome to be with you both. And all three of you, because we got Emily over here who's going to be remote, and she's joining us from Hawaii, so actually she's probably in the better position than we are. Worldwide, every 2 minutes, a woman dies of cervical cancer. Every year, 500,000, 500,000 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer, and there's over 250,000 deaths. 14,000 of those diagnoses is here in the U.S. with over 4,300 American deaths. Those are huge numbers, and it's become the second most cancer for women worldwide. That's alarming in so many ways. I want to start by just define cervical cancer. What is it, and why has it become so prevalent?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm very glad to be here. My name's Emily Penick. I am the GYN oncologist. I'm stationed at Triple Army Medical Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I think I am currently an active-duty member. I do need to caveat that the views that I express here on this podcast are mine and not those of the government, of the Department of Defense, the Defense Health Agency, or the U.S. Army. So all that keep that. So cervical cancer is a cancer that develops at the mouth of the womb in a woman, and so at the cervix. And while we are fortunate through screening such as Pap smears or HCD technique to be able to detect abnormalities and have patient enter into either post or follow-up or have appropriate biopsies, a procedure that is needed, like you mentioned, this is still really a big issue for our patients overall, but certainly within our beginning population, that it can have a potential to really affect military readiness.
I'm Kelly Welch. I'm the executive director of Team Maureen. We're a nonprofit based in Massachusetts that's dedicated to ending cervical cancer by educating about cervical cancer's connection to HPV, which is a virus that we know causes almost all cervical cancers, and making sure that people know about the importance of prevention of HPV and early detection for cervical cancer is our mission.
I'm Dan Linskey. I'm a recovering cop.
Can you recover?
I actually can sit sometimes in a restaurant with my back to the door and not think a ninja's going to attack me. And I have conversations with my kids now. I don't do interrogations of them anymore. But I was a police officer for 28 years and the retired chief of the Boston Police Department. My most common event, I was in charge of the marathon bombing attack and trying to get folks off the street that day as quickly as possible. And then wound up 102 hours later with Watertown cops and my cops in a gun battle with the Znaiah brothers. So I am also very proud to be a member of Team Maureen and on the board of Team Maureen. Maureen was my cousin, and we grew up very close together. Our kids were like 2 weeks apart and are very close. So, this is an effort that my family has been involved with for years, trying to live on her reputation and her name and try and educate people so that they don't have to miss Maureen at the Christmas table and the birthday events and the graduations that she's missed.
So Team Maureen started back in 2006 when we lost Maureen to cervical cancer. And that's when our work began, because nobody should die of cervical cancer. It's completely preventable. And we know how to do that. So that's where our work has taken us over the last 15 or so years.
How do you get it?
Cervical cancer? So almost all cervical cancer is caused by HPV. It's a virus. It's very common. Almost everybody has it. 8 in 10 people will have HPV in their lifetime. And for some people, it evolves into cancer. For most people, it goes away on its own. They never know they had it, which means they're spreading it all over the place without knowing it. And unfortunately, for people whose immune system can't clear the virus, it can turn to precancers and cancers later in life. And it is a sexually transmitted infection. So it's spread through any type of intimate sexual contact, doesn't require sex, so it spreads more easily than other common STIs that people talk about.
And the numbers behind HPV are large too. 13 million new cases every year, most people late teens, 20s, and there's actually contributions of HPV into 6 different types of cancer. So cervical cancer being one of them. You talked about the fact that for most people, the body clears the virus. They don't think anything of it. And I think that when we opened and talked a little bit about why is this not talked about, and I think in my mind that's probably one of the reasons, is because it's almost like, well, if everybody has it, nobody has it. But really, that's not the case.
Very true. And if people don't recognize what the symptoms might be, they're never going to know that they're giving it to other people. And they don't know the risk.
We'll talk about the symptoms.
The difficulties with this disease is all the types that people are somatic. So for example, for our sheep patient, we also will detect this on a pap smear, and they may not have had any symptom up until that point. The one symptom that people can often see is systemic genital warts, which is a clear visible sign that there's something going on. But for a lot of the strains of HPV that cause cancer, until you have a more advanced stage of the disease, you may not have any symptoms until you start having abnormal bleeding or back or proper urination.
How does it affect males versus females differently? Obviously, men don't have a cervix, so they're not going to have the onset of cervical cancer. But how are men affected versus women?
Certainly. So there's 64 cancers that are caused by HCV. So cervix, vaginal, and vulvar was then affected female patients. Penile cancers, was going to affect males. Anal cancers, which can affect and then head and neck cancers, which can affect both men and women. The cancer that we're really starting to keep been affected by, and one that's actually on the rise, and really the most common HPV-associated cancer now, is the head and neck cancer, so the ones at the back of the throat, the base and the tongue. And those in particular are affecting men in a 4-to-1 ratio when compared to women, so more commonly affecting men. And we're seeing a lot more cases, especially in young white males. And so that's definitely a big change that we then see in over the last year.
How do you screen for it?
So we start screening at age 21. You can start with either primary HPV screening, or you can do cytology alone, trivia, pap smear. We have different types of guidelines based on age, as well as in prior abnormal pap smear that somebody would have. But that's the way we're screening our female patients. Unfortunately, we don't have a screening yet, but universal to screen for anal cancers or head and neck cancers. A lot of times, other practitioners will do some of those screening exams. So, like when you go to the dentist, they'll look at your tongue, they'll feel your lymph node, they'll look at the hat and the throat. If you're going in for a colonoscopy, there's an anal exam that's part of that. If you're coming in for a pelvic exam, we're looking at the vulva, the vagina, cervix. But we don't have a universal screening test that's available.
So we did have some really exciting news this week, because the FDA finally approved self-screening. And so that's going to be a new way of being able to test for HPV for people who maybe don't make it to the doctor, are uncomfortable going to the doctor, and they'll be able to eventually screen themselves and then send in those samples, which will make a huge difference in accessibility, making sure that people can get tested no matter where they are.
There's a lot of discussion about oral health, and in a lot of the materials that you at Team Maureen have have talked about and provided, and in a lot of the seminars and training you do, it talks about oral health and working with dentists. Can you go a little bit deeper on that and why that is so important as an early indicator?
Yeah, so we realized a number of years ago, even before the American Dental Association started talking to dentists about engaging in HPV prevention, we realized that if we really wanted to make a dent in the prevalence of HPV and the increase in vaccination, we needed more people engaged in the work. And so we started reaching out to dentists and hygienists and said, you're the ones that are going to see these cancers. You're the ones that are doing the screening, feeling people's throats and looking in the backs of their mouths for these head and neck cancers. So why not be at the forefront of HPV prevention? And so what we wanted to do was give them the tools and the language and the background information so that they could take that on as part of their regular standard of care in their dental office, and not just screen someone's, feel their throat for a lump, but at that same time say, well, I know your kid's 12. Have they been vaccinated yet? There's a vaccine that prevents this cancer that I'm looking for. And so we've done a lot of work over the last 4 or 5 years, actually even more than that now, almost 7 years, to provide the tools that dentists need to do that.
Well, let's talk about vaccination, because you brought it up. And so 90% of HPV-related cancers are preventable through vaccination, yet vaccination rates are very, very low. Why?
So a lot of it has to do with the rollout of HPV vaccination. So there's been all these changes, which has it's complicated people's understanding of who should be getting vaccinated and when, and that has definitely not helped. And right now we're in vaccine fatigue after COVID, so that's not helping either.
So you're seeing even a reduction from the
from
low numbers in post-COVID?
From the events, from the progress that we had made. I remember telling someone right before COVID, I'm eventually going to put myself out of a job. This is going to be great. Everyone will be vaccinated and we'll have ended cervical cancer. And then COVID happened and it all went down the toilet. And then the other issue for the low vaccination rates is that HPV vaccine is not required for school entry in most states. And so it has a much lower vaccine uptake and lower rates than other common adolescent vaccines because it's not required.
I mean, imagine if there was research that said that we could vaccinate against lung cancer. My dad died of lung cancer, and after having a lung removed, lasted like 8 more years, and died from complications from it. But like, if that vaccine existed and we could stop that, like, that's a no-brainer. So I think it's an education piece. We have to tell people what it is, what it isn't, right? Take the boogeyman away from it and get people to understand that this is something that, can help your kids not get cancer.
Well, the numbers, again, speak for themselves. Active duty military and veterans are twice as likely as civilians to develop cancers associated with HPV. And there's also a significant rise in HPV-related cancer in military males than in other demographics. So, Emily, let me turn this over to you. And why are we seeing those numbers so high in the military as compared to the civilian population?
Riskier behaviors are sometimes associated with younger age and with the various situations people are finding themselves in a military scenario. And so we know that we have a young active duty population. We know that the most likely demographic that's going to fire an HPV infection is usually someone between the age of 15 and 24. So that makes up a large component of our active duty forces. And so between risk factors such as multiple sexual partners, tobacco use, those are probably the 2 biggest ones. Those are things that can expose someone to HPV. And then once you get that persistence, you start to get concerned about the precancerous and cancerous lesions. And that, coupled with full vaccination rates, as you touched on, there's a study back in 2017, about 26% of active duty women between the ages of 11 and 26 had initiated HPV vaccine. That only 47% of those who initiated the vaccine actually completed it. When you add those risk factors plus the vaccination rate, that I should add is the recipe or the risk of developing cancer.
Talk a little bit deeper about the vaccine itself. What does the vaccination process look like? Because Why would you start it and not complete it?
In up about HPV vaccination, it really starts in that pediatric age range. And so our family Medicaid providers, Team Maureen mission, our dental providers, pediatrics, really you want to start vaccinating between the ages of 9 and 26 is considered the appropriate timing. But ideally, the younger we vaccinate, the more likely somebody is to complete the series. And so if you're under the age of 15, you only need a 2-shot series. If you're 15 and older, it's a 3-shot series. And I think that essentially it's the one drawback then for that it's that it does take multiple doses to consider everything as complete, as opposed to just receiving one dose of being done. We do have severe data of the World Health Organization and other countries that's potentially one shot may be effective, so maybe we will see that in the future. But at this point in time, if you're over the age of 15, you need 3 shots, but you're under 15, it's 2. For those who are adult starting the series, you get your first dose, and then 2 months later, the second dose, and 4 months after the second dose, you can get the third dose. And so that you should want people might forget he complete the series or draw the back to initiating and starting that.
Just 30% of female and 18% of male veterans have received the vaccine, as compared to 62% of civilians and 37% of 62% of civilian women and 37% of civilian men. So, as Danny mentioned, when we're sitting there in our SRP site and we're getting anywhere from 2 to 14 shots in a single setting, why aren't we just adding that to the list? And is that something DOD is looking at? And why don't they just add another shot and make it 15 and get you on your way?
We were talking with some friends that do similar work in Maryland and had that same question posed to them. And they said, well, it literally takes an act of Congress to add to the vaccine schedule that is required. And so there have been some shifts over time. The vaccine used to be available at boot camp. But that shifted a few years ago, and then when that happened, we saw a drop in the rates. Then, making something that was bad already even worse. But maybe Emily can add to the details about what it would take to add it to the regular schedule.
So again, like the official policy side of things, but exactly the point that you said, but really take lawmakers looking at what our policies are as it relates to our fighting forces and making that a mandatory vaccine. I think there are people that fighters can be doing certainly to improve the vaccination rates at the surgery and medical boards mandate that stirred up a lot of strong feelings. So I truly hope it's the vaccine mandate in the future and this current climate that we're in, but it is my hope that one day that we see something as an oncologist that we would see. I would love it if I had to take care of any active duty service members and their family members that have cervical cancer. I think other thing that could be considered would be an opt-out choice. Say by default we'll give you this vaccine unless you say I don't want it. And certainly the work that we're doing to improve education both for patients, but certainly for healthcare providers in recognizing how to get the vaccine, how to look at charts, see if people are due for it, and making a strong recommendation. A study can show that if you receive strong recommendation for getting the vaccine, someone is 10 times more likely to receive the HPV vaccine. So the recommendations that we give are very important in helping eradicate cervical cancer and all HPV-related cancers.
That's why I think Team Maureen is trying to work with medical students, right, and get this conversation into them early on. When the vaccine for COVID was out, I got COVID and I got COVID bad, right? So I sat down with my doctor when he said, hey, I said, what do you think? He said, this is someone who, I trust, right? He's my primary care physician. He said, if I were you, I would take it. And here's the reasons why. And I built that relationship with him over years, right? So he's had my 6. So, all right, doc, if you think I should take it, I'm going to take it, right? And then, I took the whatever series he recommended. But if we can get doctors and dentists to kind of champion this and think about it and have conversations when these, when kids are younger and when kids are in high school, you got to get a physical to get into the military, right? You got to have a doctor sign off on it. So having conversations with the primary and he's saying, all right, if you're thinking of going, let's get you squared away so that if you get exposed to something, you're less likely to have, the ability to catch it and the ability to spread it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that idea about making sure that providers have the tools to make those really strong recommendations is driving this project that we're working on with Dr. Penick that will really try to educate military doctors and nurses, people who have the ability to influence whether or not a patient decides to get vaccinated, and making sure that they know, all the background information, that they know the compelling reasons, that they understand the connections to cancer, and hopefully we'll make a change that way in the absence of a mandated vaccine.
Yeah. Tell me about Maureen.
Loving mother of 2 kids. She fell in love with her high school sweetheart, Mike, and they made it work. He went to Harvard, and she was out at her school. She's a very talented athlete. She had grown up dancing and gymnastics. One of the favorite movies back in the day that her brothers used to like to play was when she fell off. I don't know if it was the parallel bars, where she, basically almost crushed her skull. And then the brothers thought that was funny, right? Because she got up and bounced up. But she was a consummate competitor, and that was, she was competing in a gymnastic competition on a collegiate level at a high level, with Olympic quality athletes all around her, or it was Scrabble, right, or something else. You had to win, right? I remember the kids. We used to vacation up in Maine as young families together, and my kids and her kids. She would make us go to the arcade. And every kid had to win something. So we'd go to the water gun arcade balloon, and she would make sure that the parents were turning, all of our water guns on one kid, so they would win, and then someone else would win, and someone else would. It was fine when it was just us, but sometimes there were other people wanted their kids to win prizes, and it caused some concerns. She made passionate about everything she did. She worked hard with work, but she was passionate about her family and her friends, and she had a scare, and she had an early diagnosis, and then we thought we got it. And she just bought a brand new house with Mike. The kids were doing great. I mean, really, they were coming into a great time in their life. And I think it was Thanksgiving. We were up the house, and she talked about how her back was sore and how she was having back pain. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh yeah, just get some back pain. And I'm like, oh, I don't like that, because my father, his cancer presented as pain, in the back before he got it. So I'm like, geez, you really, you got to do something about that. And unfortunately, she went and got checked, I think a week or 10 days after that, and found out that she was sick again. And she was surrounded by her family as she went through her treatments. She fought till the end. And brought us closer together, made us realize, look at today, right? We're seeing the sun, we're seeing the ocean, we're seeing each other. I got to see my son this morning, my wife, don't take it for granted, right? He said I'm a retired cop. I spent 3 weeks, I've been at 6 funerals, right? My team folks I went through walls with and doors with are, having health issues and leaving. So she left way too young. She had a whole life ahead of her. Her kids, her son is a standout lacrosse player in college, and her daughter is a genius who went to Oxford. And then, after getting her undergrad and master's at Oxford, decided to go to where's the other amazing English school that's not Harvard? Cambridge. Yeah. So she, underachiever, and she speaks. Now she's speaking, I think several different languages. She crushed it in school, and she's crushed it as a young woman. And the foundation that Maureen laid was amazing. And that's why it's personal, right? This is she was taken away from us at the height of her life. And we don't want some family to go through that if they don't have to, right? Someone not to see their kids graduate from Oxford and Cambridge College and all the, watch her son, play lacrosse he's so big they had to get him a special helmet because his head was too big to fit in the regular helmet, and he crushes it. She'd be, and again, we talked. I don't know if we were filming at the time, but she comes and says hello. I mean, she still wants to let us know that she's in charge and ordering us around. And she showed up right before we started filming as a cardinal here today, and that's a family lure that she's either a cardinal or a monarch butterfly. And it seems like whenever we're thinking of her or we're going through something, either one of those shows up and you go, hey, it's Maureen. She's checking in on us. So, yeah, she's a special kid.
And we should be able to get to that point where no one loses a loved one to cervical cancer. It's completely within our reach. And we can't say that for other cancers. So like Australia, as a country, took on a broad vaccination campaign for all young people and a broad screening program to make sure that no one went unscreened. And they're anticipating they will not have cervical cancer by 2035. So we know it's possible. It's not like we're dreaming something that doesn't, isn't grounded in reality.
Well, and education and awareness is the primary focus that you have at Team Maureen. Who are you educating? Who's the audience? And what are the different topics that you're bringing to the table in those discussions?
So our education is basically in 3 different pillars. We focus on provider education, which we've already touched on. So making sure that medical and dental providers have everything that they need to offer really strong recommendations for HPV vaccination, because we know that provider recommendation is the biggest factor in whether or not people accept the vaccine. So we do a lot of education with that. We also want to make sure that with the ever-changing cervical cancer screening recommendations, that providers who do pap smears and HPV testing know exactly what they need to be doing and for who and on what schedule. And so a lot of provider education. The second pillar is focused on the public. So recognizing that the more lay people know about HPV and its connection to cancer, when they go to the doctor, they're more likely to say yes to the vaccine, and they're more likely to follow recommended screening requirements to catch cancer early. So we go to a lot of health fairs, we go to public events. We did a big campaign last year going to baseball games, trying to reach those white men who we know have high head and neck cancer rates. And we just talk to people. We just let them know, did you know that HPV causes cancer and it's preventable? Just to raise awareness.
Some of it's parents too, right? So when you start having a conversation with your child's primary care doctor, and it's about, hey, this is a cancer, it's a sexually transmitted infection. A lot of parents want to shut that conversation down, right? When they have little 12 and 13-year-old boys and girls. So, hey, we're not getting there. We're not going to have that conversation. I don't want to have that thought in my head, right? So we have to educate parents that, look, it is that, but yet there's an ability. Doesn't mean your kid is got to be sexually active to get this, and it doesn't mean that sexual activity is occurring. However, it's somewhere down the line. It's most likely that kid is probably going to get sexual at some point in their life. Maybe when they go into the military and they're a young Marine or Army Ranger somewhere in the world, right? And we probably should prepare them for it, right? Just like we prepare them with measles, mumps, and rubella and all the other stuff. But I think sometimes parents want to push away from that conversation because of the connotation of where the disease comes from. And I think making sure doctors can have intelligent conversations and parents can hear it in more than one setting, right? So if other parents, the soccer team is talking about it, the baseball team's talking about it, teachers are talking about it, and it takes that kind of taboo away from it, that it's a dirty, oh, wow, what are you saying about my kid? No, we're not saying anything. We're saying that, there's a possibility in your lifetime you're going to be exposed to it, and you can do this and not have that exposure be fatal.
Yeah, there's a great example that providers often use. When do you put your bike helmet on? Do you put your bike helmet on before you get on your bike? Do you put it on when the car is coming at you? Or do you put it on when you've already been hit by the car? So, you don't wait. It's prevention. You put it on long before you, have any opportunity to have a bike accident.
I
That's
put
the
it on as I'm
point.
walking to the bike, Kelly, because I can't even go.
To comment on the concern about sexual activity among adolescents, a wonderful poster that the CDC made at one point in time, and it said you're not opening the door to sex, you're closing the door to cancer. And studies have looked at vaccination rates and sexual activity and have shown that there's no increase in sexual activity among adolescents and teens who received the HPV vaccines. So really getting that message out that this is really about cancer prevention is such a key part of the vaccination strategy.
How do we get people to take action?
The more that we normalize conversations about, did your kid get this yet? Instead of, are you going to get this? The more that we just make it the common social norm that everybody gets vaccinated, and we talk to our friends and family about that, the quicker we'll get to the threshold where everybody is protected. And one of the things Eileen was just pointing to off camera is that we've not only are we trying to reach providers at Army medical centers and making sure they have right messaging, but we're also doing some work with the Military Spouse Advocacy Network, making sure that spouses who are the ones who are having to take kids to doctor's appointments when someone is deployed, that they've got the information that they need to.
Well, I come from a world and I'm sure Emily will attest to this, but I come from a world of a bunch of folks who think they're invincible and are often the last ones to think that they actually have something wrong. They're the last ones to ever want to go see a doctor or ever go talk about any of their issues. And so I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to bring what you're doing into the Special Forces community, into our Green Berets and our Navy SEALs, who I know you do a lot of work with, Dan, and get it in front of these communities and get people to understand that, hey, this is one of those conversations that you got to have. You think you're a badass, but cancer doesn't care if you're a badass.
No, it doesn't.
No, we've colleagues who tip of the spear, and they came home and cancer got them, right? Missiles, nothing could get them. Cancer got them, and if you were, you're going out on a mission, you wouldn't leave your rifle behind, you wouldn't leave your vest off, right? You're gonna put it on because that's what gets you through and protects you. Well, if I have a vaccine that can prevent you from getting cancer, that's a no-brainer, right? And that's a tool in the toolbox that we want every veteran to have. And have it on the convenience of the government, right? Let the governments pick it up, and if you didn't get it as a kid, well, let's get it now and nip it in the bud. So I hate, we don't have a solution to the suicide problem with our veterans yet. We're kicking around trying to figure it out. This is an actual solution that we could deploy that would have results, and we could put more resources on our suicide challenges and trying to figure out what that is to try and get those. Hey, I'm made of steel. I'm okay. I don't need any help. I don't need, nothing's wrong with me, when in fact there is, right? Especially the world you've been in, where you've been, what you've seen, what our veterans have endured. We need to be putting everything we can to support them when they're back home.
Yeah.
And I'm actually to chime in with one little tidbit here. We've been talking a lot about prevention today. But I just want to put out there that even if somebody has been affected by HPV and you weren't previously vaccinated, you can still get the vaccine. And so it's actually recommended for up to age 45. Again, 9 to 26 is sort of all comers we want to be vaccinating you. But ages 27 to 45 can also get the vaccine. It's sort of a shared decision-making conversation that happens between the provider and the patient. We know that if we vaccinate women who have previously had cervical dysplasia, which is the precancerous lesion, if they get the vaccines, they have a decreased likelihood, up to 55% decreased reduction in that cervical dysplasia coming back, even if they've already been infected with HPV. And so regardless of what your HPV status is, it's not too late for someone to get the vaccine, and there can still be health benefits for that. So our catch-up campaigns are certainly an important part of that as well.
Awesome. Well, whatever we can do to continue to spread the word, we're going to do it.
Thank you.
So, because I 100% agree with you. We live in this world where there's so many things we can't control. And when there are those things in the world that we can control, we need to take the initiative, and we need to do everything we can, and we need to make sure that there's enough education and awareness and initiative. One of the concepts that we put forward in leadership all the time is we got to have a bias to action. We got to be willing to make decisions and do things, take initiative. And this is one of those initiatives that we have to take. So I thank you for kicking off the holiday weekend here with me. It's a beautiful day. I know Maureen was here with us as we had this conversation, and I look forward to spreading this message, supporting Team Maureen, everything you're doing, and let's get involved with Green Beret Foundation. Let's set that up and get and really have some impact across the community for this.
Thank
you very much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
American Jedburghs went on to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast, an official program of the Green Beret Foundation. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other long and short form content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow the Jedburgh Podcast and the Green Beret Foundation on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, or Threads. Send your comments and inquiries to fran@jedburghpodcast.com. As former members of Special Operations Forces, the Jedburgh Media Channel and the Green Beret Foundation remain committed to supporting all generations of U.S. Army Special Forces and their families. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.